The municipality of Tiwi in the province of Albay is exposed to multiple environmental hazards. The eastern seaboard is exposed to flood. High elevations are prone to landslides, while the middle part is prone to earthquakes because of the presence of fault lines. These hazards are important to be integrated into the planning of land use and development in the municipality to ensure the achievement of its vision. The Climate and Disaster Risk Assessment is a 6-step process that aims to determine the risks and vulnerabilities of a local government territory to impacts because of present hazards and projected changes in the climate. Why is the Climate and Disaster Risk Assessment important? To enable the local government unit to adapt to climate change and reduce disaster risks. The Philippines is estimated to lose at least 6% of its annual gross domestic product by 2100 because of climate change. Seasonal rainfall patterns and warmer temperatures will cause reduced worker productivity, among others. Regions in the country are also projected to have wetter wet seasons and drier dry seasons because of this climate change. These changes may influence agriculture and fisheries directly and other economic sectors indirectly. At least 14 million Filipinos are estimated to be relocated because of the impacts of projected sea level rise. More severe tropical cyclones and droughts may also occur as the climate continues to change and temperatures continue to rise. These changes are additional to the existing hazards that threaten local governments because of present gaps in disaster risk reduction. What are the activities and expected outputs in climate disaster risk assessment? The aim of climate and disaster risk assessment is to determine the risks and vulnerabilities of the local government territory. Because of this, it mainly integrates with the CLUP process through step 4, or analyze the situation. The CDRA mainly endeavors to identify priority decision areas, locations that are threatened by natural hazards and can be more vulnerable and at risk to disasters with the changing climate. Through the CDRA, the succeeding steps of the CLUP may be directed to prioritize these areas. Also, because steps 3 and 4 are interchangeable and iterative, the findings of the CDRA can be used to revise the vision before proceeding to step 5. These are the 6 steps of the Climate and Disaster Risk Assessment prescribed by the 2015 Supplemental Guidelines for Mainstreaming Climate Change Adaptation and Disaster Risk Reduction and Management in the CLUP process. First is to collect and organize climate change and hazard information. Second is to scope the potential impacts of hazards and climate change. Third is to develop the exposure database. Steps 4 and 5 are to conduct, respectively, the climate change vulnerability assessment and disaster risk assessment. And finally, summarize these findings towards integrating into the CLUP. Because of the mandate to mainstream climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction to the CLUP and the CDP, the supplemental guidelines also outlines how these can be integrated in the other steps. However, this video will focus on what we did in Tiwi to integrate climate change and disaster risk into the situational analysis. Because of climate and disaster risk assessment, land demand can be adjusted to account for climate risks and vulnerabilities. For example, how housing can be constrained by sea level rise or increased flooding potentials. What did it look like in my Tiwi experience? First, because of the sectoral studies, we had a separate CCA, the RRM sectoral study, which was then integrated by our land use planner into the different CLUP steps in Volume 1. Secondly, because of time and resource constraints, and also the technical complexity of the climate and disaster risk assessment, we were only able to provide less detailed than the prescribed methodology. We were only able to provide a less detailed analysis than the prescribed methodology. For example, the hazard inventory was undertaken on a barangay level, checking which hazards are present in each barangay. Also, instead of an exposure database that details the facilities that are vulnerable to different climate and disaster risks, the type of facilities that were affected by different hazards were summarized on the barangay level. Corresponding overlay maps for each hazard were not included in the final plan, but GIS maps were provided to the municipality. This type of summarization that indicates the barangays affected by different hazards can be used for prioritizing barangay assistance, even without the comprehensive land use plan, even with the comprehensive land use plan in progress. Again, this data and information were gathered because of the updated ecological profile that the municipality has recently formulated with the help of students from the UP Department of Geography. A priority decision area we identified in the municipality of Tiwi is the current central business district that can be exposed to projected sea level rise. We determined this through overlaying land use plans, through overlaying land use maps, and hazard layers. This data and information came from the updated ecological profile. This underscores the importance of data gathering and continuous updating of different data collection methodologies and tools for the local government unit. How can LGU planners maximize the climate and disaster risk analysis? First, prioritize assessing the related hazards of past disasters and how climate change can affect these. In the case of Tiwi, flooding and landslides were the primary hazards. The Albay province is continuously threatened by typhoons. These hazards can be made worse by projected more severe tropical cyclones and projected sea level rise because of climate change. Secondly, LGU planners should share their exposure databases among LGU offices. The local The local planning and development office is the technical hub of the local government unit, and in my opinion, it is the responsibility of the planning and development office to initiate and maintain the exposure database. However, it is a reality that working with other local offices may be challenging given different political inclinations, which I previously addressed in step 2. I am excited with this project of the USAID surge and the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development of a template and training guide for the CDRA process that will not require internet connection. Hopefully, they can complete this before the deadline in December. Also, this paper by Pulhin et al. 2020 published in April 2021 recommends some interventions in the climate change mainstreaming of local government plans. They recommend that the national government prepare the climate and disaster risk assessment to free the LGUs from the CDRA procedure, which is technically taxing, and shift capacity building efforts towards understanding and mainstreaming these findings into adaptation plans. There are existing databases and WebGIS and web-based mapping platforms of the national government that can be used for CDRA. I believe, again, the problem is with the delegation of multiple duties to the Planning and Development Office and the absence of a focal office for climate change in the local government unit. The climate and disaster risk assessment is an integral tool for mainstreaming climate and disaster risk into the CLUP process. Though technically taxing, it is an essential process to make the situational analysis more sustainable and more risk-sensitive, given that climate change is here and now, and our country is on the top of the list in terms of disasters. What do you think of this episode? Send me a message at emptinho.com. Also, follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify.